Well, hello out there, all of you lovely people. I hope you are doing very well. My name is Rob, a Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today, I know you're shocked, but yes, we are going to be talking more about Metroid Dread. Now, I promise you I'm not trying to turn my channel into a 110% only Metroid Dread focused YouTube channel, but obviously, this kind of stuff is just what I'm here to do, man. I am so excited. I've been living my life waiting for a new Metroid game, and the fact that it is Metroid 5, which is also Dread, you guys already know. You've been seeing my videos over the past week. This is a huge deal. This is just what I wake up every day wanting to talk about and constantly thinking about. It's still relevant, fresh news. There's a lot of conversations and some big theories to discuss that I will be going over the course of the next week or two. But I will still be covering other things that are not Metroid as well, so I'm just putting that out there as a disclaimer, that there's other stuff to talk about that I very much still enjoy discussing. However, we're still on that Metroid train, man. And with Metroid Dread, I've started to realize, as I think a lot of us have, that this game is in the primed position to really do something special for the Metroid franchise. Of course, before we dive any deeper into the Metroid Dread topic, I like to remind you guys that I am always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I upload several videos every single week, and I try to live stream around once a week. I'm hoping to cross 17,000 subscribers before the end of 2021, and I am getting very close. I've had a huge surge over the past week, which is awesome, and I thank you very much for that. I cover all things Nintendo, I cover every single little bitty thing about Metroid, and I discuss all things gaming. So as you watch this video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then hopefully you will consider subscribing to the channel. So the essence of this discussion, like I said at the beginning here, is that Metroid Dread really finds itself in a very cool and awesome position to potentially save, quote-unquote, the Metroid franchise, and I do kind of have to use the word save loosely, because it is a very popular long-running franchise with a huge fan base and a huge following. But as we know, and I have discussed on previous videos over the years, the Metroid franchise, as far as the games, has been on some shaky foundation over the past couple of years, and I guess really more like a decade, and throughout the last couple of releases, which is very unfortunate because it's had some divisive and controversial releases, a spin-off that really no one asked for, and then with the announcement of Metroid Prime 4 being the greatest thing in the world, the sudden cancellation and then delay as the development restarted under the old Team Retro Studios was a huge setback for the franchise and for us Metroid fans who had been counting down the days for something as awesome as Metroid Prime 4 to even exist in the first place. And then we get the news that it exists, only to find out it had to go through this horrible development hell situation. And while I absolutely believe that the game is going to turn out fantastic and just blow our minds more than we could hope, we're still waiting. It's still a mystery. That restart set the game's release back several years, and so we've been left wondering what the hell is going on with Metroid. And so in comes Mercury Steam with Metroid Dread to save the day, because this game seems like exactly what the doctor ordered for us Metroid fans who have been struggling the past several years. And I do always like to remind you guys, and especially for any newcomers to the channel here through this video, that while Metroid Other M and Metroid Prime Federation Force were controversial, divisive games that definitely sort of split the fandom and maybe set the Metroid franchise on a bit of a downward path in terms of overall success and critical reception, fan reception, and even sales, I actually do like those games to varying degrees. I actually think Metroid Other M is a pretty strong game. It's got some very big flaws and some questionable choices that I wish they didn't do, but the overall experience is both a good and fun action game and a serviceable Metroid game. It's not a terrible game, it's not a terrible experience. Metroid Prime Federation Force is in a different situation where I actually think it's a pretty darn good game, just as a video game in its own vacuum. It's very fun, it's very beautiful, the soundscape is fantastic, it sounds and looks like a great Metroid game on the 3DS hardware that it was made for. But it was on the 3DS, not the Wii U at the time it was revealed. It was a multiplayer-focused game, and it did not have Samus, at least as a main character. She cameos at the end, spoiler, but it's not a Samus Metroid game, and so there were a lot of problems with it in that respect. And so with the renewed hype in Metroid thanks to the Metroid Prime 4 announcement in 2017, and now the huge bomb drop that is Metroid Dread, we're starting to see a situation where we might be on the other end of that bell curve, so to speak, that we've been seeing the Metroid franchise go on, where it was the most popular, greatest thing and everyone loved it. Then it got kind of shaky and was on the downward turn through Other M and Federation Force. Samus Returns, of course, was a huge boost because it is a great game that also released in 2017, but that happened after the announcement of Metroid Prime 4, so we were already on that bell curve. And thank goodness the last officially released game was a good game, because that's really the injection of life the series needed. And now Metroid Dread is kind of, I think, going to continue that goodwill and that positive game creation into the new era. Right now, we are seeing renewed interest and hype in the Metroid franchise, the likes of which we've almost never seen. Partly because Nintendo really seems to be caring about the franchise, not only just based on their decision to make Metroid Dread, which is Metroid 5, but also the fact that they're branding all their Twitter accounts and social media and their main marketing around Metroid Dread. They're really showing the world that Metroid is a franchise that matters. It's one of their longest running staple franchises. The newest game is coming soon. It's a big deal and get hyped for it. And that really carries a lot of weight in terms of how successful Metroid Dread will be. I mean, I've used this example several times, brought it up on a podcast the other day as well. To me, the original Splatoon on the Wii U was a great showcase for what Nintendo's marketing can do when they put their all into something. I love the Wii U, but it was not popular and not many people had it. However, they came out with this brand new IP that no one had ever heard of that was really a weird game about being kids shooting ink and squids and stuff. And somehow, on the very unpopular Wii U, that game became a massive hit and sold several million copies on that console. That should have been impossible, but Nintendo marketed the hell out of that game, and so it was a huge hit. And now I think we're starting to see Nintendo do the same thing with Metroid Dread. And the Metroid franchise, as much as I love it, I have to admit this, does need this support and help from Nintendo and the marketing power behind it. And so Metroid Dread, I really think, is going to be a turning point for the Metroid franchise. And how cool is it that we all get to live through this period? If you scroll through any relevant social media like YouTube and Twitter, you can see so many people talking about Metroid, Metroid Dread, the franchise as a whole, and just being excited and hyped about it. And obviously, if you follow me, I'm one of those people you're seeing constantly talk about Metroid. And the fact that we're seeing other people continue to do the same, and so many other people who are also saying that they've never really played a Metroid game, but they're excited for Metroid Dread, this information, this kind of hype and excitement, means that Metroid Dread is probably poised to become the biggest hit in the Metroid franchise of all time. And I know that sounds like a crazy thought, but I really think Metroid Dread will become the best-selling and most successful Metroid game to date. At least until Metroid Prime 4 comes out, which is almost for sure going to be even bigger than Metroid Dread. But Dread is really setting itself up to be a massive success. There's really two big things working in this game's favor. One of them is what I already said, the fact that everyone is so hyped and interested in this game, including people who have never played a Metroid game, who will be newcomers coming to play Metroid Dread and also buying this game. The other is that Switch effect. How many times have you guys heard me talk about the Switch effect, the power of the Switch, the magic of the Switch in terms of selling software, selling hardware, making Nintendo's brand stronger, moving units of product? That is something that the Switch is doing. And I know that there are some people who are maybe more critical of the Switch or Nintendo during this era, and I understand that. I even share some of that criticism. Like, this isn't my favorite necessarily era of Nintendo, you might say. The Switch is not my favorite Nintendo console. It's actually kind of lower on my list, if I'm being honest. Although, I do love the Switch, don't get me wrong. It's only when comparing it to some of the older consoles and the older eras of Nintendo that I think maybe it's lower on the list. Just in its own vacuum, just compared to the other consoles on the market today, it's a great machine that I very much love. But even if you're critical of the Switch, what you can't deny is the fact that games just sell on this thing, man. This thing is a game-selling factory. It is crazy, especially first-party Nintendo games, right? They just do gangbuster, obscene numbers. And I think that releasing Metroid at this time where there's been a drought, where Metroid Prime 4 has been making us painfully wait longer than we wanted to, when everybody is now excited about this game, you put this thing on the Switch of all consoles, this thing is guaranteed to be a hit, man. I mean, a lot of us have been talking about the potential sales numbers. There's tons of people throwing stuff out there. I've discussed it. I put a poll up. Other people are discussing it. And we have to remember that the best-selling Metroid game previously is the original Metroid Prime, my all-time favorite video game, and that game only sold over 2 million. I think it's, maybe closer to 3 million in sales, but it didn't cross 3 million. So Metroid Dread coming in and potentially selling 3 million means it's going to be the biggest hit just based on that number alone. And make no mistake, that number 3 million is a very big number, and that is something that I think Nintendo would for sure see as a massive success. In fact, I'll even go one step further and say, if Metroid Dread only sells 2 million, which would make it not quite the best-selling Metroid game, if it sells only 2 million copies, I actually still think that's going to be a huge hit for Nintendo. But this thing is going to sell more than 2 million. I think most of us know that. My personal target is in the 3 to 5 million range. I would love to see higher. I would love to see it hit even 10 million. I don't really think that it's going to go that high, but again, 3 to 5 million, numbers that something like a Fire Emblem Three Houses pulled, for example, that's a massive hit for any game of any franchise on any console. Regardless of the Metroid situation, 3 to 5 million is a huge game. And so once you attach that to the Metroid franchise, which notoriously has not been the biggest seller, it's a game changer. This is all a very long-winded way for me to say that Metroid Dread, I personally believe, will change the fortunes of the entire Metroid franchise going forward. It's going to change it for the better. It's going to bring Metroid back into the zeitgeist of being known as one of the best franchises on planet Earth. And again, we're all lucky enough to live through this turning point. And so, in wrapping this conversation up, I think it's also worth noting that the potential success of Metroid Dread, if this all turns out to be true, is also very likely going to only aid Metroid Prime 4, which, in and of itself, I already expected to be a massive hit when that released, even before we knew Metroid Dread was being made, and I think most of us probably felt that Metroid Prime 4 was also going to benefit from the Switch effect and the Metroid drought and the insane hype and development cycle of that game. But now that Metroid Dread is going to be releasing between now and the launch of Prime 4, and Metroid Dread has everyone interested and excited and is going to be a big hit, I think that's going to further set the stage for Metroid Prime 4 to have an even bigger platform of success. Not to mention, if the Prime Trilogy ever finally shows its face and also releases on the Switch, that's just going to be more of a feather in its pocket to have a great platform for success. So Metroid Dread really is, to me, the turning point, the shifting point for the entire franchise, and it's my favorite franchise, so I am so happy to be seeing this right now. I am re-energized about gaming as a whole, just because Metroid Dread was announced and is coming soon, and I've seen a lot of you guys kind of share the same sentiment, and it's a wonderful feeling and a great thing to be seeing. It's a great time to be a Metroid fan, a Nintendo fan, and a gamer. This really is a positive moment for all of us, I think. So I'm gonna end the video here. I want to know what you guys think. You've heard my discussion and kind of theory, so to speak, about Metroid Dread representing a turning point for the Metroid franchise. Do you guys agree with my theory I laid out? Do you have maybe a different perspective or a different theory? Whatever you think, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.